Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar. Thanks for joining us. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm marketing operations here at Smarty. Today's webinar is about lessons learned from validating over 440 billion addresses in 22. We began marketing this before 2022 was out. So we predicted that number based on where we were at. I don't know the actual number. Did we cross 450?
I don't know. Well, I think we kind of rounded down. So we weren't like,
Yes, because there's on-premise solutions that.
right.
Well, we
couldn't
said
track
over.
more. Yes.
That counts.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
before I introduce you to our presenters, just a couple of the standard housekeeping items. Yes, this webinar is being recorded. We will send a copy of that out to everyone who registered. So if you need to step out early, or if you'd like to forward the recording on to someone that you think would benefit from it, you'll be able to do so. To interact with our presenters and other audience members, we have enabled chat, and also you can use the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that the entire time. All right, our presenters, we have Trent Howell, Head of Marketing, and Brady Amundsen, Video and Audio Content Specialist, the two obvious authorities on what we've learned from over 440 billion addresses in 2022. Without further ado, I'll turn the time over to you, gentlemen, and we'll move forward.
Thanks, Andrew.
That sounds great. And as head of marketing, I have been with Smarty for just under 2 years now, and I am just blown away with how many addresses get processed every day. Some things I didn't realize that we go through, but there's a lot.
I've been with Smarty for 6 years now, and nothing surprises me. So this is all just old hat for me.
That's right. But yeah, on average, we are processing 2.5 billion addresses a day, or I should say, our customers are using our services to process that.
Right.
That's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff that's coming through this. And at one point we wanted to, it's kind of a little story here. One of our main competitors, they released this,
It was a press release.
Yeah, it was a press release kind of saying like, guys, we validated 30 billion addresses in 1 year. Wow, 30 billion addresses. And we're reading this article thinking like, neat. We do that in 12 days. And so we wanted to create like a page to talk about, like on our website, to talk about like how many we do in a day and what that looks like as far as like comparing it to, other things. So one of the examples we have is like, if we had 2.5 billion Cheetos, you would need like 1,930 vans to haul those things. And surprisingly, there was a lot of math involved in these, in these analogies that we were trying to put together. So we did like the Cheetos. We did the 35 trips around the Earth. I mean, we had to figure out that the circumference of the Earth, the average human step, and kind of do some calculations there.
Fun math.
Yeah, we've told with like ping pong balls in Olympic-sized swimming pools, and then like the average lifespan and like what that looks like as far as like 2.5 billion seconds, 62 years, by the way. So anyone that's like 62 years and above, you made it to 2.5 billion seconds. So pretty cool. That's a whole lot of time.
That is nice to know. Well, when we're talking about address data, there's a very common one that people think of is shipping and delivery.
Yeah.
But there are so many different ways people are using addresses. We're listing just a few of them here. A lot of the government services that are coming out recently, we've had some of that where they're mailing to a lot of people. So again, that's kind of shipping and delivery. But routing or public noticing of areas where you need accurate addresses to make sure that you notify people properly.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that actually, I lied when I said nothing surprises me. It was actually not too long ago. It was maybe like 2 years ago. We had thought the main thing that people used address data for was the shipping and delivery thing. But turns out a lot of our customers are using address data are using our products to blend their databases, to merge databases, to standardize like a whole group of addresses, and then use that to merge databases. And
because there's so many databases that a company has, from a finance database, a customer database, a client database.
And that's
Support,
one of
yeah.
the main use cases, which I didn't know until I had been here for
I'm
like
not surprised.
4 or 5 years.
But now
It's
you're
pretty
not
nuts.
surprised.
Now,
Yeah.
now I'm surprised by
Yeah,
nothing.
you're not. So with validating that many addresses, we thought it would be important to say, what are the top lessons we've learned? Here are 6 we want to highlight that stand out to us. And the first one for me is that there's a lot of behavior changes that society has had, that users have had over the last decade. The amount of spell checking that we use, think of what we had previously, and now we just rely on it. The type ahead predictions, when you're on obviously with search, you're seeing some type ahead. With online shopping carts, same thing. You're seeing type ahead predictions of what product you're searching for. That is a huge change over the last decade. Likewise, with our mobile device use, that's been growing steadily and it is still skyrocketing. But we use a lot of dual devices.
Right. Well, the 2-factor authentication, right? Like you want to log in somewhere, like they're going to send you a text, or you have to get a notification on your phone. And so there's a lot of that.
So you've got your device in hand. But we also find that mobile devices are more mistake-ridden.
Yeah. And to illustrate this point, it just so happens that my sister sent into my family group chat. She said, hey, it'd be really fun to do a typing test. And so like a typing speed test. And so everyone in the family took it and we all posted like how many words a minute we were able to type. My dad, who's been a developer for, 30 something years, he posted his score, and my brother, who's been a developer like for not as long, scored almost as high as my dad, and like with about as much accuracy. And my dad said, well, now he's like, hey, for fun, you should try doing it on a phone. And so my brother did it on a phone, and he totally dropped his words per minute, like was cut in half or more than half, and the amount of his accuracy like significantly went down as well. So that's just like a real live example that like the mobile device inputs, like it's a lot more common to see mistakes there.
And because of that use and because of our changing behavior, we're expecting that of our solutions. One of the interesting things that I've found in looking at statistics, obviously being in marketing, caring about websites, website visits on mobile devices, 71% to 29% for desktop now, which is huge. Total sales are still higher, but if you look at the conversion rate, even adding to cart on mobile devices, it's being added quite a bit, but they're converting at a lower rate, which tells me that there's a problem that we're having with purchasing through mobile. One of our customers, Speedway Motors, came to us for exactly that reason, as they saw that their use of site traffic on mobile devices was huge, but their checkout was terrible. And so they wanted to optimize their checkout. So they implemented address autocomplete so that it would do the type ahead predictions, because fat fingering things on a mobile device, trying to enter in your address, especially if it's multi-form, where you've got to tab through and type in. So they would see a lot of cart abandonment. Once they implemented address autocomplete, that took off, that their conversions took off. And then they started using address verification to save on their shipping costs from all those orders. So they've seen a huge increase in conversions just because of making the checkout process easier on mobile devices.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced that. I'm sure people here have also experienced that. Like when you start going through the checkout process, and if there is a lot of things you have to do, it's like, later, I'll do this later. And sometimes you don't ever come back to it.
Yeah. So one of those big lessons learned is how we're changing our solutions because of our behavior changes.
Yeah.
One other thought is, so I'm just been thinking about the mobile thing. I'll turn my camera on so people know I'm talking. A lot of the time I'm now using the voice to text kind of thing to try to speed up form completions and such, or I'm expecting the autocomplete feature on my phone to move forward. Like it's remembered my name and my phone number and sometimes my address if I typed it correctly the one time that I typed it in. But if I'm typing a different address and using the voice to text to try to go faster, Google, I'm using a Google phone. Google may be able to get the words that I'm getting correctly, but it's not making sure the address is correct at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And with those changes in behavior means that our expectations have skyrocketed. What we expect of our devices, of stores, of commerce solutions. We're a data-driven society, and we're coming to expect more because of that. We want things faster. We want a quicker response for what we're asking, what we're inquiring. We're also less tolerant of errors. We're a little less patient, I should say, of that. And
that's not true.
There you go. You're too quick. Misdelivered packages, again, with the shipping and delivery, that is a big one. This happened even just last month, where we ordered from a location online. A couple of days later, when expected, we got an email from not only the store that we bought from, but also from the carrier that they used to deliver our package, both of those saying that our package had been delivered. We were at home the whole time. There was nothing on the porch. We'd never heard anything. A couple hours later, we still haven't heard. So we go ahead and ask for a refund, saying this didn't deliver. It did not arrive. And they gave us a refund, which was great.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, a neighbor down the street, 5 houses down, called us and said, I think I have your package. So it turns out it got, even though this carrier has delivered almost every day packages to our home, it was off. Something was off.
Yeah.
Now, we did notify the store and say, yes, we'll pay you. It did get delivered. It was just wrong. But we're so quick to jump to conclusions because of that.
Right.
And we're even seeing that in website traffic, again, with how impatient we are. I was surprised to see 40% of people won't wait more than 3 seconds before they're gone.
Oh, yeah.
And even more so with those checkouts that we talked about. So our expectations are just huge.
Yeah. And then, so what we're doing, like what Smarty has done to try to match those expectations is like, we really focus on accuracy, the accuracy of like addresses, geocodes, all that things. It really matters because it can really help alleviate some of the pain points that are created by those, like, by ourselves, like those high expectations. So one of the things that we have seen is something called a false positive, which is when you put something into, like you enter in an address and it may be an incorrect address, but then the service will then tell you like, no, but we can tell you where this is. For example, there is a, there is an example, but sure, we'll go into this. Yeah, essentially, like you guys have probably at some point gone into a mapping service and you type something in, like some address that you know, and you'll say, yeah, you can even do it right now on your phone because you probably have your phone and your laptop, as we talked about. You can type in your phone like 123, this address sucks, and hit, yeah, give me directions to this place, and it'll put a pin somewhere, even though that doesn't really exist. And so with these like false positives, like if you were, you'd much rather have something come back saying like, hey, this is not a real address, rather than saying like, oh no, this is it. It's in the middle of this field in New Guinea, right? Like that doesn't help anybody. You're sending a package somewhere or something and it's going to the wrong place. And so what we've done is like our enhanced matching engine uses like fuzzy logic, which I had to get some clarification on this. Fuzzy matching and logic is basically how far can we stretch an address when input is given to us? How far can we stretch things before we start returning false positives? So one of the things that I was talking to our product manager, he said like one of the most important things that we need is a house number. So you can see on this example here, we have like 19205 6-penny Monument, Colorado, or CO, because it's not capitalized. Yeah, we assume it's Colorado. But the fuzzy logic looks at this and sees the house number and then begins to stretch things. So it takes like 6 space penny. And it's like, oh, well, we know that according to like this house number that you've given us, there is not a 6 space penny, but there is a 6 penny lane. And is able to use that logic to then really match to match up really bad addresses and find the correct match. So yeah, the 6 there, and then you can see like in this other example here, this one they use like wrong secondary information. So you have like the top example there says unit 110 when really it's suite 110. So there's some wiggle room there as far as like what we're able to take and say, like, people have generally said unit, but like what other things is there that can match? And so in this case, it's like the suite. And then we got and then we got this one, which is all just out of whack. Everything is totally out of order. And again, because you can see like the common theme here, that the house number always remains the same. And so here, because there's the 748, basically the fuzzy logic, the enhanced matching is able to find the exact address and return that like very quickly as well. So we're matching that high expectation of speed. So
yeah, and not guessing. So if there's 5 houses on a street and the numbers range from 25 to 85, if you say, I want house 63, well, there is no 63. Some will still return and say, oh, yes, this is valid. But
right.
You don't want that. You don't want that to match because it does not exist.
Yeah, it doesn't help anything.
Yeah, exactly. So that is very important. And here is how essentially the basic address verification process works.
Yeah, so you can see just kind of on the left here, you start entering your address, then we have like the autocomplete in this example, so you can see all the different options, and then so it parses the components. So it looks at like the house number, the city, the state, the zip code, and then puts that into its respective fields. And we return like the version that is like standard to that specific locale. So that everything is the same. You don't want to have in one case where the house number is at the back, and one where it's at the front, and all that stuff. We want to make sure it's like standardized, so everything in that specific locale is standardized. Then we cross-reference that with our authoritative databases and make sure there's a match. Ching, got the check. And then because we have that now verified address, there's a whole lot of other information that comes with that address. We call that enriching the address. So that could be like your zip +4 code, your geocode, your latitude and longitude, congressional district, time zone, all that.
Residential delivery.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot in there. And that's how it gets built out. So that's some of the importance of it.
Before we move on, there's one other question that has come up, and this may be one where we bang on the wall and ask someone else to come and answer. But one of the things, I'll just read the question. One of the things that I've found is that Google sometimes has the wrong address for businesses and our own locations. Can you talk about that and how the industry handles those instances to strive for good records on search engines or public address databases like Google Maps? Maybe we can just talk about the difference between doing a search on Google Maps and doing a search with Smarties.
Yeah, well, as an example that was talked about with pins, a lot of the Maps applications know that a human is operating it. So they can approximate rather than need the accuracy. So again, with that, if I type in a 63 on this street, the map will plop a pin in there because it's assuming that me as a human, once I get close to it, I'm visually going to reference and see where I'm at. So as far as mapping goes, we do see that things have been evolving and they're changing. They are getting better. We still find a lot of inaccuracies. We've seen the same thing even with using some of those other services with our business location, the same thing where it will drop a pin. I think it dropped a pin like 200 miles away from our actual location because it didn't recognize the street name.
And one thing that I've been reminded of is that mapping is very different from validating. And so you could have a very valid address and you could throw it into a mapping service. And if that mapping service, if there's no address validation, like it really could put it anywhere because it's just trying to map. Where like validation, like there has to be a match with an authoritative like database, an authoritative address database.
And when you're saying validating, are you meaning mailable or?
Validate, or it could be mailable, or we come back and say that's not valid. So it could say that's not mailable, or it's a vacant place. So it all just depends on like the input that's coming in, and then cross-referencing that with authoritative data sets to say like, is there a match in this data set? Yes or no, which the mapping, they don't do that.
Check.
Yeah.
The mapping typically doesn't check that. So as far as an industry goes for mapping, since a number of services do use our address verification with their mapping tools, and those are helping with routing, and those are getting better. Not all of them do. So to define what the mapping industry is, I don't know what guidelines they're going for, but I do think they're getting better. We know a lot of those services that are using routing have started to use our services, which is a good thing to see.
Yeah. One other question, unless you want to finish that thought.
No, I just that we've just seen that mapping works best when it's coupled with address validation. And so if there are things that are being thrown in the middle of nowhere, chances are there's not any validation or verification going on there. So something the industry can do, start implementing address validation.
Yeah. One other question, and this may be a better question for our product development team, but sometimes the 911 addresses and the USPS addresses can be slightly different. Do we provide 911 addresses as well as USPS, or is that a separate database that we haven't began to work with yet?
Well, that is one that we do reference multiple databases. We don't disclose all those, but that is a good question for the product team. And we'll talk about one of those points here, I think, coming up next, related to some of those databases. So
hold on to your horses, question asker.
Thanks.
There you go.
Or whatever animal sound you made prior to the webinar beginning.
That's right. And one of these that we've seen in talking with our product team, this has been a big jump. Obviously, businesses have been looking at international for some time. And as e-commerce has grown bigger, we've seen even more of a spike since COVID with trying to expand into new markets and reaching out across borders internationally. And what they're happy to see is that data providers and countries are getting better with their data quality. Even the international formats are improving because there's a number of countries where there has been lacking in standardization of address formats. And I recall living in one of such country where I remember going down a street and I was told, okay, we live in number 21. There were 4 21s on that street, which was just crazy. One of the things interesting though with international is that the translation demand of translating in the languages is still relatively low. But we do see with the formats, especially there's big growth in Southeast Asia demand for that. And we do find with the translation that the address format changes depending on if you're in the local language or using a Latin language. So for example, we're used to a number and then a street and a city and going up, whereas in the native language, those are opposite, where it starts with a country and then a locale and then a region, and the street number comes last in the data format, which is interesting thing. So again, our databases are getting better at that. The 240 plus countries and territories that we cover, we're getting better data quality for that and getting more accurate. So our match rates have been going up, and we've seen a lot of improvement on that, which is nice to see. And then our product team continues to reach out and go in leaps and bounds because there is a increasing demand for that.
Yeah.
And I think this is now where we get back to this data questionnaire.
And here we go. Question asker. It's coming. So one of the things that like Trent noticed or said that we noticed is that there's a huge need for things outside of like just USPS, right? Like there's definitely a time and place for it, but then there's a lot of addresses that are not in the like United States Postal Service database. And so one of the reasons why is because the USPS, it wasn't built to handle like the modern demand for what we've got. Trent and I were talking about this yesterday. It's probably not ever going to happen that you order a 65-inch television from an e-commerce site and it's going to be put in your mailbox. It's just not going to work.
Or if you've got a PO box,
right?
Yeah, modern demand of we want things delivered to our physical location.
Yeah,
is now what the USPS was built for. It really was letters, and so you could go to your local post office, or if you got a mailbox in your community that you go to. That doesn't work well for our modern demand. So there are more needs for it. And if I'm ordering some food to go,
yeah,
I don't want it delivered to my mailbox at the end of the street either. I don't want it to my house. And this first came across me, this non-USPS, really when I think about my grandparents that lived in a small southern Utah town, that it was just the post office. That's where they had to go every day. They had to go drive half a mile to the post office to get their mail and come back. But if they wanted pizza, it's going to come to the house.
right.
And you as well talk about delivery with your garage.
Oh,
that
yeah,
you can
yeah.
get in.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like there are some e-commerce sites now that if you want to put in specific delivery instructions, you can do that. And frankly, the USPS isn't equipped, or they don't have time to do that kind of stuff, right? Like if I wanted someone to say, hey, here's my garage, like, I'm now granting you access to my, Wi-Fi garage door. Please put the package inside my garage and close it. There are like, that's not anything the USPS is equipped to handle. And so there's a lot of different things that tied to our physical addresses, like that we get out of using information that's not necessarily tied to the US.
And what was just mentioned, 911.
Oh yeah.
If you got a 911 call, they don't want your PO box.
Right.
They want your physical location.
It would be pretty unfortunate if you were having a stroke and they just showed up at your mailbox with an ambulance.
So one of the things that's great to see is that we've been continuing to grow our data set as well. And it now includes more than 20 million non-postal addresses. So being able to validate and verify addresses that is not just reliant on one source.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Aliases.
Yeah. Not aliases. So last year, it was last January when we changed from Smarty streets.
Let's see if
Oh, there you go.
this. Oh,
You got to unzip a little.
oh, my knees are too big.
Yeah.
Oh, now my belt.
You're
is
not
on
even
the
getting.
chair.
You're not
Okay.
even going to get it.
Smarty Streets.
He's wearing a shirt. that
Smarty
says Smarty
streets. Many people on here still know Smarty streets, where we dropped the streets
Yeah.
because where we're going, we don't need streets,
That's right.
if I recall. But street names change often. They change more often than you realize, and that's something that I found out. And so with validating these addresses, there's a lot of different alias addresses because there's multiple street names for one street, which also means that your database can be full of it. If I lived on, we can even talk about a local one here with Bulldog Boulevard. Well, I think even before Bulldog Boulevard, it was probably 1200 North.
Yeah.
If I lived on that and I was in companies' databases with that, then the local high school petitions and changes it to their mascot. So Bulldog Boulevard. Well, now I could be in my medical database that way. Well, it's the same address, but you're going to have a duplicate. And then once that high school was bought by a local college and they moved down the street, then it got changed again to Cougar Boulevard. Which is crazy.
You could be living at 1200 Bulldog or Cougar. It's all the same thing.
Right. And so when you talk about blending databases and at a company, you could say, oh, we've got 3 customers. Well, no, that's one customer. It just happens to be a duplicate address.
Yeah. Even though they look different, but they're all the same.
Yeah, exactly. As far as how they go in the street. So that is also precipitating a need that's been growing in demand for unique address identifiers, so that you can say, no, this is one address, even if the street names and such can change.
Yeah.
It is one spot.
On that same subject a little bit, there's a question here. My company delivers salt to Department of Transportation state sites. Often these salt sheds are in rural areas or next to interstate highways where there's often no street address or even a street. For example, a salt shed is right next to the interstate. So if we're trying to use geocodes more, so we are trying to use geocodes more to locate these sites. Do you have any suggestions on how to handle those sorts of cases?
As far as like getting them, I mean, because geocodes are, our geocodes are very, very accurate, right? Like you can, and actually, that's a good question, because if there's no address tied to it, it's usually what we use to power our geocoding.
Yeah, I think that is one that we bring up with our product team now.
Right.
Our product engineers, it's a good one. But as far as geocoding goes, that is where you want to zoom in on, because that is with your latitude and longitude. And with our geocoding, we make sure that it's precise to the edifice, to the building, not the parcel.
Which is the
parcel is the area that it's in. So if you think of a farm with a barn, well, the parcel is, the 5-acre plot. If you're going to have a geocode that drops it in the center of that plot, that's different than the barn that's on the corner of that lot. You want the geocode to drop right there at the rooftop. So our level of accuracy is the rooftop level geocode accuracy, which I think gets towards that, but I think we still ought to have our product engineering team.
That's associated to an address still though, right? So if if
they have geocodes, they could use something like reverse geocoding.
Oh, sure.
Because we do have a reverse geocoding that could maybe be used for routing or something like that.
To plot an address.
To kind of plot things out. So that I'm not exactly sure what information they have. If you just have like shed number 3, that's going to be hard. But if you did have, the latitude and longitude or something like that, you could probably use reverse geocoding to come up with some type of solution.
Don't forget to put care of salt.
Okay.
That way you can
goes to the right spot.
Yeah.
Very good.
What a very salty comment. That was fun.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of, and here's one that you may not think of with addresses, but one thing that, again, with the 2 years here that I have come to find and the lessons we've learned from working with thousands of customers around the world, people want people, which is funny because we don't tie people to our addresses. Our addresses stand alone. But what we mean by that is people want to interact with people. Chat bots and AI and a lot of that machine learning is all the rage. I was on with a company a couple of weeks ago where I had ordered and I was having some problems with an account or login, and I wanted to just reach out. And I tried to use their chat. It was a chat bot. It was asking me questions and it wanted my online ID, which I did not have because I did not yet have an account. It would not let me proceed with the chat. And I went the rounds and rounds trying to find other ways to just get through their chatbot to get answers to my questions, but it was hard to do so.
There was a very large social media corporation that I was trying to get a hold of so that we could give them money. I was just trying to give them money, and they only gave me the chatbot. And it was a very unique situation because there was some hacking and stuff involved. And no matter what I did, I would say, like, I have this, it's not related to this, it's not related to this, please, I need some help. It's like, you probably want this particular page. And like, here you go. And I go to the page and it says, you know what you need to do is chat in and see if you can find a solution. So it was like this big circular thing and it drove me absolutely bananas. So it's not fun.
Yeah. And the same thing with all the phone trees that when you do call into something.
Yeah. A little throwback here. So navigating the phone tree is kind of like we called it storming the castle, because when you call in sometimes, like you call your bank or something like that, and like Trent was saying, they want your account number. It's like, you don't have an account number. What's your phone number? Okay, what's your social security number? It's like, by the way, all of our menu items have changed, so make sure you listen to the very end to get to hear like what you have to press or not press to get a customer representative.
Either 0 or a 9.
Yeah, it could be 0 or a 9, right?
If you jump the gun, it starts all over.
Yeah. So like you're having to go through this big thing. Then once you finally say representative, then it says like, okay, tell me about your problem. And then so I can connect you. It's like, okay, now you have 5 minutes. Like, by the way, and you have to listen to that same oboe music that everybody has. And it's just such a pain in the keister. And so that's one thing that we don't do.
Yeah, absolutely. Really cool. Which is great. And we know we've been praised a lot for our documentation of how easy it is to implement all of our address APIs to get those going. But at the same time, when there's an issue, they want to be able to talk to a person. And we focus on that personal set. When you call in, you talk to a real person. If you chat in, you've got somebody, a real person on the end of that chat.
Yeah, and they're
if you were to
fast.
drive in, you can come talk to anybody
Yeah.
as well.
I guess that's true. If you want to come visit us at our HQ,
Yeah,
we can have someone to talk to you.
but that's one of the things that we've seen over and over, and have been impressed with, that the responsiveness, the speed, and the personalization that we get, and that we will maintain, because we see that as important. I still laugh at this quote that we have from a customer that did leave us a review that said, "I would let them date my sister."
Yeah.
Now that's high praise.
And one thing that's interesting is like people love our documentation stuff, but like if you were to go through our reviews, most of the 5-star reviews are all, there's some mention of customer service. They all love the customer service.
Yeah. So even though we're doing billions of addresses every day,
Yeah.
we have time for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you matter.
That's right. So we want to wrap up a little bit here with jumping into some future predictions to see what we can come up with. Drone delivery, as the picture was giving away already, is a topic that we're getting asked frequently as well, and talking about how important are addresses. Well, very important, but likewise, we were talking about rooftop level accuracy with the geocode. I don't want my parcel dropped off in the back acre.
Yeah.
I want it on my doorstep. So I think there's going to be more and more demand for it from that. We obviously know with the shuttle services that we have, the move to driverless cars, addresses are going to be key.
Right.
In that. Fraud detection is another one that has been coming up quite a bit. It relates a little bit to the alias address, where people are using an old address to get away with things. We're looking for fraud detection, using addresses more for that. And I think that is going to continue to increase. Likewise, what we were talking about with the international expansion, I think that's going to continue to be something very, very big.
Right.
And then another one I want to address is a single keystroke address autocomplete.
Which I thought he was messing with me when he said this. Like single keystroke. I was like, that doesn't seem possible.
And this came from our engineers as well. If you implement a reverse geocoding, we know with our mobile devices, they know our locations.
Yeah.
If we're pulling in maps, they know where we are, proximity location. Well, if you're on a mobile device and you start to type in something with that first keystroke, first off, if you use reverse geocoding, we'll be able to know where you are, and then from that extrapolate an address. And the assumption being made that if you're typing in an address with your mobile device, you're looking for something nearby. So it will limit the address lookups, the valid address lookups to that locale. And immediately when you start to type, is going to autocomplete for things in your proximity because of that, which is just fascinating, which what we're going for. And I think you have a final prediction too.
Yeah. And then I've done a lot of thinking about this. And my prediction for the future is that the best actor in supporting role will go to Ke Huy Quan, who is the supporting actor in Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is my prediction. That will probably be realized or not much sooner than some of these other ones. but that's my prediction, and I'm sticking to it, Trent.
All right, we'll go with your future predictions.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, and from our standpoint, thank you for joining. If you have more questions, we are here for it. So, do we have any more questions at the ready, Andrew?
Boy, do we.
Oh,
the
no.
question is the head of marketing the right person to ask these questions? Some of these questions may say, maybe you should chat into our support about that. And we won't loop you around this time.
You'll get a real person.
You get a real person at the chat. Okay. Any recommendations for handling a combination of US and international addresses in a common system? Is there a universally applicable address format that works well, or is it better to have specialized address formats per country?
Address formats are dependent on the postal authority for that locale. So, yes, our services will take care of both, and it will know if you're delivering to Japan versus Taiwan versus Hong Kong versus Canada, that the formats do differ.
Yeah, and if you were to look at the formats that that international addresses take, some of the formats that they take, you'll see like sometimes there's really no hope to get like a global standardization because they are just so all over the place. And so I think, just if you were to use something where you can run a list of both US and international, and it spits it out in the correct format that it needs to be, that's going to alleviate a lot of headache, because unless every address starts to get a unique identifier type thing, maybe that could be a solution.
Well, and the good thing is that our systems will identify,
right,
if, okay, this is an address in France.
Yeah.
Then we're going to format it this way. Yeah.
Another question: is there an integration with shipping vendors like UPS or FedEx for address searches that could include additional accessorial thank you, fee into charged by the shipping carriers, such as residential, commercial, extended delivery fees, zone location, and several other fees? This could proactively help us with shipping expectations for the customer. So
that's an mouthful.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I said, I slowed it way down. So that may have been harder. I think what they're asking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, is there an integration where we can plug Smarty in with UPS or FedEx, and it registers whether it's business or commercial, residential, or if there's therefore going to have extended delivery?
Yeah,
fees?
as far as an integration with that, those are up to those providers. Most of those carriers do utilize our services, which we can say, which is great to know. The residential delivery indicator is one of the metadata points that our addresses return. So companies should be using that. Not necessarily all of them are. One of the case studies, one of the customers we've worked with that's on our website actually does this, or they verify the billing, the invoices from carriers for their customers, because they want to make sure that they're not being charged for delivery if it's in a commercial versus residential, because there is a different delivery charge depending on that location. So this company uses our services for that residential delivery indicator to validate the invoices they receive from shipping carriers. So, but as far as an immediate integration, I'm not aware of.
Right. I think that's
one from those services.
Yeah. I don't know if that's anything we necessarily do on our end. So like you said, I think it's be something that the carriers would probably do to however they want to calculate stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if you're a company that's utilizing one of those carriers and you are aware of the costs, you can use Smarty's address validation to find out what that is and then pull that data from the other one beforehand. We're quite a bit over time. We'll take one last question because this is a good one. Does the autocomplete tool come with US address verification?
They are two separate products. So they can be bundled, and talking with the sales rep for what package is best for you. And it's going to be based on volume, which is going to be the best setup. But they are two different APIs, two different services that use it. Like the example we mentioned before with Speedway Motors, they started with autocomplete to help with their checkout process. Once they alleviated that bottleneck and were getting better conversions, they realized that there were cost savings to be had on their shipping delivery. So they added on address verification. And then those two combined made sure that with autocomplete that those are valid addresses they're shipping to.
Yeah.
Anything to add? Since it's the last question, this is your last chance.
Oh, this is the last question.
Yeah.
I just think that Ke Huy Quan did so well in that movie. He acted as multiple different versions of himself from multiple universes. I don't understand why this is even up for debate. But also they are two different products.
I'm surprised San Dimas High School didn't get involved. That's a good one. Okay, so that's it for us. If you would like to have more of your questions answered, maybe got more of the technical stuff that maybe the head of marketing and our head of creative probably aren't the best people to answer, just go to smarty.com. In the bottom right corner, there's a little chat bubble on any page. Click that and you get immediately to a real person on our support team, and they're more than happy to test addresses with you. They're more than happy to answer any of your questions about mixing databases for international and US. We've done all of those kinds of things. And they're very experienced and very helpful in getting you there. Also, while you're on smarty.com, if you don't already have one, you can grab a free trial. There's a little sign up for a free trial button in the corner, and you can do that at any time. Thank you, Trent. Thank you, Brady, for joining us. And hopefully you guys got what you're hoping out of this webinar. We hope to see you next time. Have
Thanks.
a good one.